Deadlock, developed and published by Valve, is now a cat out of the bag and available to anyone who is willing to beg for a playtest invite online. The game is a mix between a moba, which stands for Multiplayer Battle Arena, and a hero shooter. Mix Dota 2 and Overwatch together, and Deadlock is kinda what you get. In the game, 2 teams of 6 battle over 4 different lanes in a sort of tug-of-war, with the lanes leading into each other's base. Along these lanes are defense towers that your team must push through in order to defeat your opponents. On top of the 6 other players you'll be fighting, there are also NPC allies and enemies that are dropped into the lanes. Unaided, these minions will just run into each other and reach stalemates until the end of time. It's for the players to break the deadlock. There are around 20 different characters to choose from at the moment, and they all vary pretty wildly. Each character has 4 abilities they'll gain over the course of the game, but which order to acquire and upgrade them is up to you. Defeating enemy players and NPC minions will grant you currency, which you can then go to spend on items at the shop, making your character even more powerful. Throughout the game, the 2 teams will be constantly clashing in team fights, and in a tug-of-war fashion, a good game of Deadlock goes back and forth of one team killing the other until eventually one team has enough money, also known as souls, to defeat the enemy team and destroy their base. While not ideal, dying at the beginning of the game isn't a huge problem, as the respawn timer is quite short, maybe 10 to 15 seconds, but by the end of the game it can take upwards of 60 seconds to rejoin the fight. This means that around the 30-minute mark, even just one of your teammates dying can cause a chain reaction which could spell death for your entire team. While you're waiting to respawn, the enemy is deep within your base and can possibly finish the match. That's what Deadlock, and the MOBA genre as a whole, is in a nutshell. I know it's pretty basic stuff to those who have experience in games like League of Legends, Dota 2, or even Smite, but I think it's important to lay it out. It's a genre full of nuance, asymmetrical mechanics, and a constant flurry of micro-decisions that the player has to make to be successful. The genre demands constant excellence to maintain a monetary lead over the other team, and really isn't for everyone. That said, the highs felt in an evenly matched MOBA game are difficult to get anywhere else. Even if you lose, it is satisfying to know you did your best against another team that did the same. A bit of history about me. I've got around 500 hours in League of Legends and over 2,000 hours in Dota 2. I also haven't played a MOBA since 2015, when I renounced the genre and decided to put that stress behind me. I came to the realization that if I hadn't gotten good at Dota 2 after 2,500 hours, I would never be good at the game. These days, I barely play multiplayer games at all. I'm older and have got other stuff in my life going on, so I just don't like having my gaming time beholden to other people. We all have those friends. I'll be on in 5 minutes and they show up 2 hours later. We've all been in that ranked match where 15 minutes in someone just disconnects and invalidates the game. We've all witnessed or been victim to some form of toxicity that you just don't have to put up with in a single-player game. I will admit, I wouldn't have given this game a second look if it wasn't a new Valve game. I don't think I'm alone in that, but I'm glad I did. I view multiplayer games as virtual bars that you and your friends can hang out with, and it's been a long time since there has come a game that a majority of my friends have had a similar interest in. Even the ones that don't like MOBAs have come in and enjoyed Deadlock. So why would someone that doesn't play MOBAs or even multiplayer games in general want to jump into Deadlock? Well, firstly I would say that the perspective shift to third person has a lot to do with it, at least for me. MOBAs have traditionally been played with a top-down perspective and with real-time strategy control schemes. This has evidently worked brilliantly for the genre over the past 20 years, but I'd argue it's not the most fun way to control a character in a high-skill game like this. RTS controls are designed to be used on multiple characters on multiple fronts, and I just don't think it's that much fun controlling a single character with this scheme. While I'm sure I tried some of the other popular third-person MOBAs like Smite or Paragon at one point or another, I don't have any memories of doing so, which says to me I didn't enjoy them or find them memorable. From what I understand, those games were still quite limited in how your character was able to move and shoot. As I said, I haven't played much of those games, but from the sounds of it, Deadlock is a cut above. The movement in Deadlock is a lot of fun in a way that Dota 2 and League just can't compete with. Here the movement is fast, responsive, and quite vertical, think something like Overwatch. It gives the player a freedom of movement and aiming just not found in other MOBAs. The shooting is another thing that I feel puts Deadlock above others in the genre. There was a point where I noticed that about half the reviews on this channel have been of third-person shooters. Risk of Rain 2, Resident Evil 4, Giant Citizen Kabuto, you name it. I love the genre, and feel confident in saying that Deadlock, even so early in development, feels really good to shoot in. In this game, every character has a gun, and they're all unique to that character. Things that'll differ are the normal stuff, like bullet velocity, reload time, recoil, etc, etc. Range plays a huge factor in whether or not you'll want to take shots, with most characters' bullet damage falling to basically nothing after 30 meters. Reload time is another big factor. Reload times are long, and ammunition is an incredibly valuable resource. Part of what makes the bullet economy so important is how last hitting and denying works in Deadlock. For those who aren't aware, there are two concepts in MOBAs that are the crux of how the early game plays out. Those concepts are last hits and denies. Last hitting is what it sounds like. Getting the final hit on an enemy will release an orb into the air which contains the currency reward. Shoot that orb yourself, or it reaching a certain height on its own will put the currency directly into your pocket. On the other hand, denying is the act of shooting the orb released before the opposing player can. Doing so denies the other player of the currency that could have been theirs if they were a little quicker on the draw. This is a shake-up from how traditional MOBAs handled denying enemy NPC minions, which would have you last hitting your own minions to deny the last hit from the opponent. The perspective shift and shooting mechanics are a huge shake-up and pretty much enough to get me on board with the game, but it has more going for it. I don't want to talk too much about specifics on things because the game is still in very early testing and a lot is subject to change. That said, this video will still have some archival value in 5 years when the game is inevitably unrecognizable to its current version. While the aesthetic of the map is grey, dry, blocky, and highly subject to change at the moment, I still dig it. Deadlock is running with a 1930s New York real life mixed with magic and weird tech look. It reminds me of that 2007 multiplayer Shadowrun game that they put out on the Xbox. It's pretty bland, but there is also something unique and appealing to it. The heroes themselves really stand out to me. I often struggle with character names or even discerning characters apart from one another, but that wasn't the case with Deadlock. In the space of a week, I managed to learn all of the character names and be able to recognize them clearly on the battlefield. Like the map, these characters are subject to get changes and redesigns, but some of the designs feel more solid than others. Since getting into the beta, I've played a lot of a character named Kelvin, who I've grown quite attached to, but in an effort to have a little variety to the footage I show here, I've been trying out the other characters too. I don't know how to explain it, but I find almost all the characters to be likable. They all have just enough personality to grow attached to, but not too much shoved down your throat that it becomes irritating. With what I can only call Valve magic, the developers have somehow dodged the dreaded hero shooter fatigue we've all been hearing so much about. There is probably a lot more that could be said about Deadlock, but more than anything, this video is a way to express my enthusiasm and excitement for this game. A new game from Valve, how could you not be excited? Unless you really hate MOBAs, which, well, that sucks. Maybe we'll get Half-Life 3 one day? This game is so good that I feel disgusted with myself in saying I'm actually a little excited to see what the skins are for it. Fuck me, they got me dead to rights with this game. Sorry there wasn't a full review this month. My ADHD has been running the show, and there have been a lot of games I've been bouncing to and from. I'm about halfway through Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, and am playing my first Ubisoft game in like a decade. Not quite sure what next month's video will be, but for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.